of technology commercialization, economic development, and so forth. Seed accelerators, on the other hand, are primarily for-profit businesses. The model has been created by investors, but there are some nonprofits offering acceleration now. There is bleed through or bleed across in these various sectors so that these new technologies are being adapted in various places, but these are the primary differentiators. And then again, co-working spaces, either nonprofit or for-profit, depending on the sponsor, but most of them are for-profit, and that's based on people who have space that is redundant or whatever that they can put to this purpose, and they're looking for ROI, return on investment, on the real estate. Okay. Selection processes. Business incubators generally have a selection, a competitive selection from the local community. In other words, not everybody gets in, a selected clientele does. Seed accelerators, there's competitive selection that could be from across the United States. Y Combinator does 2 selection processes a year for their 90-day boot camps. And co-working space, there may not be any selection criteria involved, but it's whether you can pay the rent, for example, or fit in with other kinds of firms. Terms of assistance, I think we already covered. The difference between 1 to 5 years, a 1 to 3 month boot camp, or no space limitation at all in the case of co-working, because this is primarily focused on rental spaces. And the services are, very deep, long-term services in the case of the incubator, fast test validation of ideas and opportunities, working with lots of consultants, pitch preparation and presentation at the seed accelerators in preparation for a demo day or another event in which the entrepreneurs can seek follow-on investments to make their companies real. And is that it? Is that mine? Okay, I thought maybe that was just a phone. Okay, so let me move forward. And sponsors, I have this information in the slides, but I already told you this. Let me just address the issue of investment. Incubators often do not have access to their own investment funds, though more are developing these funds, and they may work with outside angel investor networks, with other local funding sources, and they often do not take equity, although they do in some cases. Co-working spaces don't invest generally, and as you know, seed accelerators do. But they're looking, the investors in seed accelerators are looking to take firms on to second rounds so they can cash out and get a greater return on their own investment. Okay, I have a number of considerations that are important. Let me just touch on a few of these. I think that we've already talked about the confusion between the models. What's important to consider is what communities and sponsors, who's sponsoring this, what does it mean to you, these various things? So if you are an investor and you are looking for those kinds of seed investments that maybe can be flipped quickly, other investors can come in and take out your interest or help grow it, then you should probably be interested in the seed accelerators. They're primarily wealth creation machines with the wealth going into the pockets of the cashed out entrepreneurs or other investors who are backing them. Seed accelerators may not result in large numbers of hires, though, due to the kinds of companies that they are serving. So if you are a community and you're interested in job creation, that may be important to you. And other issues that are similar to this, seed accelerators are not likely appropriate for firms that are not investable, non-technology, or that require significant capital investment prior to going to market. Co-working is geared more to independent contractors, freelancers, and others with no need for manufacturing, production, or R&D space. Most companies remain small with a limited number of hires. Co-working is not conducive to firms with the goal of growing large quickly. Both co-working and incubation can contribute to local job creation, as can acceleration programs designed to work with local businesses. So, You know, I have a slide also on benefits and synergies, but I can tell you that to sum this up, I will simply say incubators, such as those in Saudi Arabia and Jordan and other places, can add co-working space to their programs to obtain the kinds of benefits and access to deal flow that co-working provides. And they can also add accelerator-like activities and adapt those to meet their own missions and their own, the sectors that they're working with. And all over the world this is happening now. It's happening very rapidly in the United States, where we're seeing incubation programs adapt accelerator technologies and learning and co-working space, and really provide a continuum across the spectrum of startup and fledgling companies, serving the idea companies, the concept companies in the earliest stages, on through to graduation of successful companies in their communities. So I hope that helps clarify. I have a couple papers for you to look at if you're interested. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Ms. Dina. We're going to have our final session with Mr. Rahman Merchant, CEO of the Hub.
Glad to be here. Thank you for Badr for inviting me to speak at this event. I'm told by Mohammed I've got 30 seconds to make my presentation, so I'll be as fast as I can. But in case I overrun, please pardon my time limit. Actually, thank Dina for being very comprehensive in her review of the co-working spaces arena. So I'm going to spend very little time talking about the actual growth model, because my actual thesis today is to actually argue that co-working in itself is probably a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition for growing startups or ideas. So a bit about who we are as Impact Hub. Impact Hub is a global network. We exist in nearly 80 locations worldwide, nearly 16,500 entrepreneurs and innovators. And our whole purpose is, as cliched as that may sound, is to use the power of ideas and startups to kind of make impact in the world. Not just financial impact, but holistic impact. So I'm going to actually, my whole presentation today will actually show you how the story of co-working, which was primarily a space-based phenomenon, as kind of indicated in the earlier presentation, has evolved from being space-based to something well beyond that. So this is the dictionary, Oxford Dictionary's definition of co-working. We've seen in the previous presentation as well some definitions of what co-working stands for. I'll let you read that. It's not very complicated. Now, Impact Hub began in 2005. It's interesting, again, that in the US it began around exactly the same time. This is the first Impact Hub that opened up in Islington in London. So as you can see, a lot of tables, a lot of people, open networking, and really that's what the purpose was. It served a need, which was to actually allow people of different, let's say, ideas and different traits to come together under a common space, very rental model based, to kind of find ways to collaborate with one another. But that was what I would call Impact Hub Beta. And the 1.0 version is really where another organization that's called General Assembly is based out of New York. They started with the co-working model as well and moved out of that because they realized they didn't want to be in the space-based game again. So as I said earlier, we are present in a lot of locations. That slide probably is not showing too clearly, but as you can see, we are really from the West Coast in the US all the way to Melbourne on the right. So we're present in almost every major city in the world. Asia and Africa are now kind of, and Middle East are the areas where we're looking to grow. And this is how the original spaces looked. So if you looked and visited our spaces in the world, you would see Milan look like that, and again, tables, chairs, desks for people to work. Now this has evolved to something well beyond that. And when I say well beyond that, we've moved to a stage where we're actually a space-based working model for startups and freelancers and independents, to an environment where we want like a community campus, where people come together to collaborate. So if you can look at this slide, that particular hub in Munich actually is a pretty cool space to work in. I mean, as you can appreciate, once I started seeing these hubs, I actually didn't want to work in a corporate environment, because actually it realized that it was very sort of non-creative. Similarly with a space like the Westminster one in London, it's actually, you've got a lighthouse, a greenhouse kind of effect as well. Very bright, very airy, very fresh. Now, I'm going to actually show you a video which was prepared to help grow the Impact Hub network in London, in Africa, I'm sorry. And it's a very nice overview of who we are as a network. And saves me the option of actually giving you a wordy presentation. Okay, let's see if we get this right. Where's my IV person? Is there a sound here, Mohammed, do you know? No, I know, but I can hear a sound, but is there a sort of... It won't work. Try it. So, but it won't because it won't be good enough. Is he there? Okay, well, you know what? If someone can call him, I'll actually come back and do this piece later. I'm going to actually do the rest of the slides, so I can just call him. I'll do the other things first. We can finish this off later. That's fine. All right. So. I'm used to be using a slideshow. I've moved to a Mac, so I actually forget how to use these. Here we are. All right, while we wait for that, so what we moved on, and this is something which will be very apparent from the video that I was going to show, which hopefully we'll show before the end of the presentation, is that we have moved to a stage where we're more like a campus, a community campus for people of different ideas to work together. An incubator that allows people both in a structured and unstructured fashion to kind of grow their ideas. And last but not least, an innovation lab where pressing issues, social issues get resolved by using the power of the community. And that again is giving you a sense of how extensive the network is so far. And because we are an impact hub, it's important to highlight the kind of impact that we have made around the world. And really one of the themes of this conversation for me is not just to kind of share with you a theoretical construct, but give you a sort of a case study on how we've actually created impact that started from co-working, but moved beyond that into community and innovation as well. So, over 750 different startups have been founded. We began in 2005, as I've said earlier. So, well under 10 years, different types of startups, a lot of jobs created, and again, a lot of customers and people who have been influenced by this. In Dubai, we actually opened up in January last year. We call it a home for possibilities because at the end of the day, it's like when people say, how can you help us? Is this just a space where we can come and rent and work? We're like, it's an idea, sort of playground where there's a home for possibilities for you to grow and develop your own version of where you'd like to take it versus a prescriptive method that sort of suggests only a specific manner to grow. And again, give you some flavor of how the space physically looks. Again, just to give you that it's not just the space piece, but it's like different themed environments that give people the luxury to work in a space setup that's kind of aligned with their own mood at that time, I would say. There's going to be another video I'd play, we'll skip that. So this was how it began, frankly, when we started moving from the space-based concept to a non-spaced, that it was about moving to incubation, acceleration, and education. And people were saying, we've got bored and tired of working in the Starbucks, the Reguses, the actual business centers, or the more sort of cafes of the world. And we'd rather be working in an environment we can collaborate with like-minded people. And this is where the idea of working beyond silos, which is why it's saying we created something for ourselves because it was something we want to do. The Emirati Launchpad is an initiative that we launched last year in partnership with a couple of organizations, a bank as well as a government entity who helps in promoting the SME sector. And the notion was very simple, to provide those young Emiratis who had, let's say, an idea that perhaps had not been well developed, to take it through an 8-week process of actually taking it from a X point to another point where they get a sort of structured programming, but also some mentoring, as well as sort of at the end of it, it concludes with a sort of a demo day presentation format. Now that was my presentation in terms of the actual overlay. What I also want to touch upon, in case we don't play the video, is today, if you look at how the communities have grown, the first aspect of the overall co-working movement that was built around providing this space rental-based environment, moved from there where this community became very powerful. And what we have seen now is a third stage, and this is probably the most interesting space or phase for us to be involved in as a global network. And this is a space of sort of an open think tank, open problem solving. And what I mean by that, just to give you an example. So today, if you want to solve the traffic problem in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you'd probably consider building a rail network. You'd consider building maybe metros, finding ways to alleviate number of cars on the road, buses, etc., other means of transport. Now, usually in these cases, what you end up finding the stakeholders, the primary stakeholders doing, is that they end up contracting with so-called experts who have got decades of experience and knowledge and research from those particular sectors. And therefore, of course, they kind of give you a lot of information, but it doesn't have to kind of they go without a certain boundary because it's kind of within the sort of realm of that expertise. What we do is we end up doing a sort of an open hackathon format whereby we take the community who are interested in solving the problem of traffic or environment and bring them in a sort of an open source, crowded hackathon format and allow them to actually solve this problem using the power of the community. So we're kind of using a co-working space environment, but the environment is simply sort of the setting. It's like a town hall, you could call it, for collaboration and problem solving. And this is where, to give you a specific case study, in London, they raised £5 million to solve 4 problems, which has been partly paid by the UK government. The cabinet has actually pledged £1.5 million, and the rest has been contributed by different stakeholders who are interested in the issue of, say, improving the state of financial services, healthcare, education, etc. And the premise is very simple. While we'll give you a certain amount to these various startups you bring in to solve this problem, if you do solve the problem as per certain KPIs, we will compensate you with sort of a performance incentive, which is kind of very interesting because it's kind of putting public money and other stakeholder money in terms of where the performance is based. I've seen my IT friend here. Is it possible, do you have the option of playing audio? Only this one? Okay, well, no, imagine you're watching a movie from the 1950s where there was no sound, and I'll let you figure out what the language is. It's actually, and you can do some lip reading if you can, and the one who guesses is right. Well, there's your prize. Let me figure out the prize later. All right? Okay. Here you go.
And the can-do atmosphere. I think the atmosphere is really great. It's like a home, it's not a place.
The network was born in London in 2005. It really was an idea of 4 young guys who wanted to create a shared workspace for people with ideas for a better world, and who wanted to build this better world through collaboration, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And from this starting point, the Impact Hub Network is today a global network hosting 7,000 members in all 6 continents. What is an Impact Hub? It's a sort of a cross between local networks of people working in the impact and social economy, incubators and accelerators who are supporting people with ideas and help them turn them into action and impact, and of course a workspace where you can come and work, connect, and you can host inspirational events.
We had this idea in London, actually it grew because other people in other locations around the world said, I identify with what you're doing, I want to be a part of this network. So it was really local people taking action and feeding into a network. It's really inspiring that it's grown so organically.
It starts with bringing startups together in one room, so that it's beyond the kind of virtual community or virtual contacts. So that's seemed very important for the startup, that they have like-minded peers around them, being able to share ideas, share thoughts, share contacts, and experiencing what it means to run a company.
For me, it just boosted
boost my productivity rate, and I've made friends as well as contacts. And